Welcome back to the channel, guys. My name is Aaron, and today I'm bringing you a feature show. I'm joined by the brilliant PeteronPole, who is also of McLaren Fan TV. We're going to be talking McLaren, we're going to be talking Mercedes, we're going to be talking Ferrari, all about their poor starts to the 2023 season. Now, this show was recorded ahead of the Australian Grand Prix. It's now coming out after the Australian Grand Prix, so some of our comments might have aged well or not so well. So yeah, you have to forgive that, but hopefully you enjoy the episode anyway. Editing Aaron is going to hit the intro in a moment, and enjoy the show, everyone. Leave a thumbs up on the video, subscribe for more Grand Prix content, and enjoy the show. Thanks for joining me. Over to Editing Aaron now. Red Bull are leading the way, with Aston Martin generally the second best team, but Ferrari, Mercedes and McLaren have all got it wrong in 2023. Ferrari made some bullish noises about improved reliability over the winter, but Charles Leclerc had the first of what will seemingly be many grid drops in Jeddah. Mercedes have finally admitted that side pods might be helpful on their car, and McLaren have already fired technical chief James Key. With me to discuss these three teams' poor starts to 2023 is PeteronPole. Welcome to the show, Peter. How are you?
What is happening? I guess I call you AHGP, right?
You
Yeah,
call me Aaron. You can call me.
Aaron, yeah.
I
What's
think
going on?
ASGP would be just too much.
Too many syllables.
Yeah.
But yes, man, thank you for having me, man. Honestly, pleasure to be on here. And to you and your crowd. Yeah, unfortunately, we've got to go through some teams that I hold dearly, and yeah, I'm going to talk about this season.
So where else can we find you? What do you get up to in the Formula One world?
Yeah, so I've got two YouTube channels in Formula One. I'm based mainly on YouTube. PeteronPole is my own personal YouTube account. I talk all things Formula One, so any stories that might be happening during the week or just anything that I might be thinking of, debatable topics, usually topical kind of stuff. And I might do some shorts about like race previews or reviews and stuff like that. And then with my co-host Mahad from the Pit Stop Fracker, I do McLaren Fan TV. Well, we do McLaren Fan TV, and as you guessed it, I'm a McLaren fan. We talk all things McLaren unapologetically, and yeah, we just try to give the McLaren fans some hope as we have to be doing this year. But yeah, those are our two sort of main channels. We stream every Tuesday at 7 p.m. UK time for McLaren Fan TV, and PeteronPole videos are just videos that will come out every Friday. Basically anything topical that I think of. Yeah, so it should be. Oh yeah, it's going to be a hard season. Let's put it that way. It's going to be a tiring, long season.
Well, let's hope McLaren can give us something to smile about. Now, let's start with McLaren. Your team, a team that is very popular, a team that
Yeah.
I'm extremely fond of. They've produced some fantastic drivers, not least my favourite driver, Lewis Hamilton. Let's not talk about the Bahrain test. The Bahrain Grand Prix was pretty rubbish from a reliability point of view. The pace seemed a bit better. Jeddah was awful because they had terrible luck. Lando Norris hitting the barrier in qualifying, then Oscar Piastri losing a piece of front wing, which then came off and hit Lando Norris's front wing.
Yeah.
Please tell us that the Australian Grand Prix this weekend is going to be better. Now, of course, we're recording this Thursday night before the Australian Grand Prix. The audience will probably hear this after the Australian Grand Prix. So please tell us that we're going to have a good weekend from a McLaren point of view.
Let's give them a spoiler alert. Yeah, it was a great weekend for McLaren. I think they've done phenomenally well. Double points finish. No, you know what? I think will it be better? Listen, let's get cars to finish. I mean, if we can get the two cars to finish with no hiccups whatsoever, as you've mentioned, Bahrain was reliability problems, then the bad luck we had in Jeddah, so if we can just have no issues that like we can't help, let us see what actually the pace is really saying. Let's see exactly where McLaren are, because the truth of the matter is we haven't seen it. Like I feel like, and I love to watch McLaren quite closely, and I still feel like I haven't seen that car this year, because whether it is that unluck in Jeddah where you've got a front wing that leaves one teammate and it dodges everybody else and then hits the other one. I mean, you couldn't write it. So uh, will it be better? I would say it'll be better for the fact that let's just not have any issues that are not like that we can't deal with, you know what I mean? So that's all I can really say. And if we can have, I wouldn't even say a clean race, because that's just clean races in Formula One are few and far between. But if we can have something where it can really show what McLaren actually is, because I know everyone's put a dark cloud over us this season. No matter who you talk to, media reports and so on, they're not having us tipped very well. So I think it will be better, but that's on the basis that nothing crazy happens again.
I think you're right in the fact that we haven't seen just quite what this car is capable of. There's been so many issues around it. And I suppose the best glimpse we've had is Oscar Piastri's Q3 appearance last time out in Saudi Arabia. So we never got to see what the car could do in Bahrain once they kind of got it suited. McLaren doesn't seem to like Bahrain very much based on
No,
the last 2 years.
it's a
Unfortunately,
write-off. Yeah,
it
it
really
seems to
is.
be a
You see
write-off.
Bahrain, oh yeah, just start the season and a couple of weeks
Yeah.
later.
Do you
But
know what?
Jeddah was much better.
Yeah, no, like this year, at least everybody knew what was going on with McLaren. If you remember last year, and we walked into Bahrain, and we were like, "What the hell is this?" Like, no, everybody was shocked. Like McLaren was just not stepping up. This year, even from the launch, Zach Brown and co were very much like, "Look, this ain't the car we really wanted to bring out to show. It's going to be a tough season. We're going to have to be developing and learning, and so on and so forth." So, from the jump, we all knew, like, okay, we're going to have to put our seatbelts on and just hope for the best. Um, but yeah, Jeddah, at least there was something to show. Because even was it even in Bahrain? I can't remember now if it was Bahrain or Jeddah, but there were moments where I think Lando was being lapped by like Lewis and co, and he was still kind of keeping toe to toe with them. So even though he was getting lapped, he was kind of sort of staying in that race just for a period of time. And it was encouraging to see because it made me realize, okay, he can swing with the Aston Martin and Mercedes given on its day. It has to be really optimum level. But it makes us not feel so I mean, I was never of the opinion that McLaren would be terrible this year. It's not been great, but I don't think we are the worst. And the season is so long this year. So God knows what kind of McLaren we're going to have at the end of the season.
So hopefully there's brighter times on the horizon coming for McLaren because we've got upgrades being reported by the race today, and it's as much as a B-spec car coming for Baku. I mean, so maybe there's light at the end of this dark tunnel for McLaren in terms of the developments, and that they admitted as much, like you alluded to, that the car at the launch wasn't what they wanted it to be. They said they'd missed deadlines for developments and performance, which is concerning. And then we've got the sacking of James Key and this triple-headed development team with Peter Prodromou, who was at Red Bull with Adrian Newey in the past, David Sanchez, who's just left Ferrari, and Neil Hoodley, who I don't actually know much about. And this comes not too long after Andreas Seidel, who kind of put a really good team together, has been replaced by Andrea Stella. And that's not to say Andrea Stella is not capable. It's just an awful lot of change. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, from the jump, Stella's spoken very well, and I, I'm right behind him. I'm sort of willing to see, what he can do. It's one of those ones. He's not been in a job like this before, and McLaren is a big task. Like if anybody's going to be a team principal there, like good luck is all we can say. But since he's come in, you know, he mentioned something over the winter where he said, "I'm going to be looking at sort of the aerodynamic side and look at the technical kind of team over the winter." And I wondered why, like his attention kind of he was paying his attention over there. It's like he'd known something when he was already within the team that, if he had it his way, there's some things that he would like to change from, early on. And I think Zach and Stella have had this conversation for some time, and they've sort of said, you know what, now we can put our stamp and our authority because the sacking of James Key can't be based on the last two race weekends. The race 2 week, the last two sort of race weekends are not really down to James Key at the moment. It's not really like performance based. Like we've spoken about reliability and we've spoken about real unluck. So they've had this in the pipeline for some time, and so it seems like, especially, I think what kind of got Zach's eyebrows kind of raised was the fact that we missed our targets. The fact that was it October time, September time, we kind of had an issue with one of the sort of the new regulations to do with our floor and everything else like that. So the fact that there was kind of some errors, like big errors that you couldn't really make if you're at a team, like if you're in any Formula One team for that matter. It seemed like Stella and Zach had always had their eye on this. It's a bit like the Piastri deal. I think they had Piastri in the bag a long time ago, a lot longer than when everything came out. So they kind of move a bit silent between themselves, and then they go bang, and it's like all of a sudden it's like, whoa, where's this coming from? Um, the three-headed sort of team that's going on there, which Stella now is going to be sort of in charge of, is very interesting to see. And I don't know whether it's going to work or not. I haven't got a clue. I couldn't tell you, but I'm buying my time with him because I think now Stella's got his hands firmly where he wants. He's very honest. He talks about what he thinks about the car, but he also talks with a bit of optimism. You know, he mentioned fourth in the launch, and I thought, has he seen the Aston Martin, and is he still saying that type of thing? So he knows something obviously that we don't, and I'm willing to, I'm so far McLaren are talking good. They are making moves because a lot, Aston Martin have made moves for the last couple of years, and getting the right pieces in there. And I know Sanchez doesn't come until the new year, but at the same time, it's like McLaren is moving. They're trying to do steps towards making this team go back to the front. And Stella said, "I'm looking forward to putting this team back on the front end of the grid." If you're talking like that, I'm sorry, like you've definitely got to deliver because you live by your words, but it's good to see somebody talking with a bit of authority, a bit of confidence, and not playing it down too tough. Like I like that, so I'm fully behind Stella. I'm backing him. Seidel was interesting because if you pay attention to those cars that we've had over the last 2 or 3, 4 years, and some people might have thought from the outside looking in, thinking McLaren have really progressed, and then all of a sudden, sort of 2020 last year came, and it was like, what the hell happened? But Ferrari did pip us at the end in 2020. In a car that Ferrari said we're not even going to bother working on. Like they had thrown all their prams, all the toys out of that pram with the sort of the 2021, the 2020 car. They just let it go and focused on what was last year's, sort of title challenging car. Meanwhile, McLaren was sort of fading back, fading back, fading back just slightly, and James Key was very much in charge of that. So, I'm a bit like Seidel. Like when we lost Seidel, I thought, oh, this is devastating. But as I started to think about it and look back at it, I don't think it's such a bad loss. Stella's no mug. He's worked with the likes of Alonso, Schumacher in those Ferraris, Raikkonen, so he knows his stuff. So yeah, it's a lot happening, but we're gonna weigh it. And why not make the change now when McLaren's not actually ready to pursue titles yet? Let's actually get everything in place. 24, 25. Let's see.
Well, you've seen it with Ferrari back in the late 90s. They put the pieces of the puzzle in position first, and then
Yeah.
they went and won multiple world championships. We've seen it with Mercedes. They've put the people in the background in place, then they put the driver in the car, and then they built the car, and Lewis Hamilton goes and wins 6 world championships with them.
Yeah.
Obviously, Michael Schumacher won 5 with Ferrari. Red Bull have similarly done the same. They saw people move on. McLaren are now doing sort of this same thing as Aston Martin, recruiting from the top teams and trying to almost dilute that knowledge through the rest of the teams. And that's why I think, as well, with the Red Bull influence of Prodromu and you've got Dan Fallows at Aston Martin, they've worked with Adrian Newey. They know his concepts. They're seeing what he's doing, and they know kind of what's going to happen. So you're going to see, and this is what everyone was afraid of with the new regulations, that all the cars are going to look the same, and they are all probably going to look something like a Red Bull. But if it's fast, it doesn't matter. And if McLaren want to be a top team, this is some of the right steps that they need to be taking. I think there's probably still a few more, and they've got the drivers to do it, let's be honest. But the big question, if this continues next year with the new wind tunnel coming online and they don't start delivering a title challenging car, at least a car that can win races, Lando Norris is locked in until the end of 2025, which at the moment is a long way away, and there's a rule change in 26. So we do see a driver shuffle around then. And also Oscar Piastri, he is the next big thing in terms of Formula One coming from Formula 2. Will they keep the faith? I mean, we did see, and we were talking about this before recording, Lewis Hamilton left to find success. He went to Mercedes. Could either or both of them potentially do the same, or do you see them sticking it out at McLaren for the longer term?
I see the concerns. I genuinely do think that if McLaren do not go further down than from where they are, I think the two drivers they stay they firm they stay it out. Lando Norris, don't forget, joined 20 what is it 19 whatever it was 18 19, and he joined a McLaren who was also in the mud at one point and has seen that team grow and develop. Okay, it's got a hiccup at the moment. It's maybe making a few steps back. I think if there's any more steps back from here, then at least Norris will look at this situation and think, okay, it's time to move around. The only thing that works in our favor, however, us being McLaren, is that where can he go? Or which team is going to take him? Because the way Red Bull looks to be set up, it's I want a number one driver and I have my number two. And number two, with all due respect to Sergio, I love Sergio, but he kind of knows his place there a little bit anyway. So they won't put Norris and Verstappen together. That would be a bit of a disaster in some aspects. Ferrari looks pretty locked and pretty tight at the moment as far as things are concerned. Maybe something happens with Charles Leclerc, but again, Norris and Sainz again, maybe Ferrari. I don't know if Ferrari will look that way. They'll look crazy to lose Charles Leclerc. But that's just my opinion. Mercedes, let's say he goes into that situation with George Russell if Hamilton happens to leave and retire. Russell and Norris, I mean, again, it's the same problem you would have at Red Bull. Aston Martin, maybe. That's something that you could put. Maybe let's see how far Fernando is, and let's see how far the development of Aston Martin is, but you can't bank on it just yet. We're just seeing an explosive Aston Martin for 2 race weekends. So that works in our favor. And Piastri, any move he makes from here right at this second, I don't know if it's a step up. It might be a step sideways or even a step back. So we've got that. At least we've got that in our favor. But I think if as long as McLaren do not make any more steps down, then we will be okay. Baku, you mentioned before, this upgrade that's meant to come in Baku. If that fails, then squeaky bum time type of thing. It's going to get a bit intense. 2024, we need to see the McLaren sort of going up, and 2025 is when we need to hit the nail running and literally attack Red Bull, Mercedes, whoever's in that title fight. So that's my preference. My instinct says no. They'll stay. The pair of them will stay and firm it.
The thing is, they're both top drivers, potentially top drivers. I think Lando Norris, if you put him in the Red Bull alongside Verstappen, he's giving the Dutchman a terribly hard time. And
absolutely,
like Perez won comfortably in Saudi Arabia. I think Norris wins by an even bigger margin in that car. Piastri potentially the same. He's shown with that Q3 appearance, he's got it. Yeah. That's one of my judges of a top driver. And this is what makes me think that Lando and George Russell are the real deal. We saw it with Charles Leclerc as well when he went to Ferrari. Qualifying pace. If you've got that inherent speed, you can always deploy it in the race. It's what makes a strategy work. Think Schumacher, Hungary 98, 18 qualifying laps in a row or something.
Yeah.
So if you've got that one lap pace, you can learn how to develop it over a race stint. Look at Lewis Hamilton. He was unbelievably fast over a single lap in his early days.
Yeah.
Now, I know people say Fernando Alonso's arguably the most complete driver on the grid, but if you want the best driver on the grid for both parts of the race weekend, Lewis is your man. Max Verstappen is very, very close. He lacks, I say he lacks that ultimate one lap pace, but we're seeing with Lando and Oscar that they've got that speed. Yes. They've got that turn of pace, and that is absolutely crucial if you want to be a top line Formula One driver. I think that's what holds back Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly. They don't have that blindingly fast one lap qualifying. Gasly and Ocon can put in exceptional qualifyings from time to time, and we saw Gasly do it with the AlphaTauri back in 2021. But that was a car that he was very much at home in, very much tuned to his preferences. And we've seen the likes of Verstappen and Norris and Charles Leclerc and Hamilton and Alonso put these qualifying performances in all conditions. And that's what sets the very, very, very top apart from everybody else.
Absolutely. I think you're bang on. I think you're bang on with that, and that's why Norris or Piastri, you put them in any of those big three or four teams, they'll cause themselves more problems than they will solutions. Yes, they're two fast drivers, but that's the problem. They're both bloody quick, whoever the other driver is. And I'm a biased fan, but Norris for me, I think people don't really understand what that McLaren is. Like Norris makes that McLaren look far better than it is in terms of the recent years. You just look at his teammate. You look at when he had Danny Ricciardo last year. You know, Danny Ricciardo is no joke either, but he really struggled in that car. And if the ducks are not aligning, sometimes these drivers do not. Only the best really appear when even like Alonso was dragging Ferrari cars, over the finish line, and nobody could understand how. He was in title races and so on and so forth. And you do wonder. That's what separates them. And Norris, with more years under his belt, he can be in that caliber. He can sit with those people. It's just now he needs a car that's going to get him some race wins for us to all kind of put him in that kind of bracket. But he's phenomenally quick. He's done things in that McLaren that you think it shouldn't be anywhere. Like we got a podium last year, right? And the car was awful last year, right? And we got a podium, and no team, besides McLaren outside of the top three, got a podium last year. So, and I look at Piastri's Q3 that you mentioned there. Again, you just think, oh my God, we've got some serious drivers here, which is like, okay, the driver section is cool. We're now dealing with the background in terms of the technical team and the backroom staff. Zach Brown's doing an amazing job in terms of, getting the sponsors in, bringing in that money because we need some money as well. Um, and so, yeah, hopefully all the pieces come together. We get the right team to build the right car, and you never know. You never know. So, what's in it for Loris and Piastri is probably the question that people might ask and think. If you're Piastri, you're fresh out the gate, you're new. But if you're Norris, I'm looking at it like, okay, let's say I want to leave. Where am I going? Really and truly. And will it work for me? I don't know.
So we've tortured you a little bit for the first part of this show, talking about
Mhm.
McLaren. Now we're going to torture me a little bit by talking about Mercedes. And it just seems to go from bad to worse. The whole situation post Abu Dhabi 21, it just doesn't seem to want to fall in Mercedes' favour at all, because they talked the talk through the winter of how this philosophy was going to be fixed without the porpoising issues, and they'd engineer it to work properly. Get to Bahrain, and they're going, "Oh, we need a change. Radical changes are needed." And we've got Lewis Hamilton saying that he was failed to be listened to by the team. Now, there was an interesting set of quotes that I saw from Mark Hughes on I think it was on Motorsport Week or motorsport.com, about this. And it was about the development of the car from 2017 onwards. So I'll just read these out. So he said the Diva car, for all the new wide car regulations of 2017, had not allowed him, Lewis, to drive it intuitively. He'd had to adapt to it rather than responding to it and it rewarding him. He spent the next few seasons urging the team to move forward, to move the centre of pressure rearwards, even if the ultimate numbers didn't support it. Each year they tried to accommodate his wishes, and each year the car got a little better, until by 2020 it was really in the sweet spot for Hamilton, and Merck's advantage was almost back to where it had been at the start of the hybrid era in 2014. That assessment is damning of the Mercedes design team, because if you've got that level of development and progress, and that's coming from the feedback from the driver who's sitting there, who can feel the car through the seat of his pants, and then you're not necessarily taking that directly, you're following the numbers, and the numbers are leading you down a path that eventually doesn't work. I think that's a touch embarrassing for Mercedes. This is the champion team of 8 years in a row, and we expect them to be, this well-oiled machine, like the stereotypical German efficiency.
Yeah.
This is massively embarrassing for them, I think.
Yeah, it's a strange one. I mean, you'd think to yourself, why would you not listen to Lewis? Like, if there's somebody who's a serial winner, like, literally on paper, it just seems to make so much sense. Lewis knows what it takes to win championships with that team. You know what I mean? It almost it beggars belief. And the funny thing is, I wonder if that Rosberg season in 2016 made Mercedes think differently, hence why it was kind of a slow burner. 17, 18, by the time we get to 20, he's gone. They've kind of listened back to him and so on. And whether 2021 is because of how the disaster ended, it's like, okay, we're going to come with our own concept. We're going to start brand new. It's new regulations. Mercedes going to believe in their own philosophy and believe in their own hype, really, because at the end of the day they did earn the hype, but at the same time it could be very much down to the fact that you had such a quality driver. Mercedes beggars belief, because I've held back. I've held back with Mercedes in that I've always felt like, you know what, they should trust themselves. If they think they've got something very innovative, because I think that's what they pride themselves with as well, is that if we're innovative, we do something new and something different, don't worry, watch. Everybody will look at us and think, this is the way to go. Now, we can call it arrogance and what have you, but I think Mercedes kind of deserved to believe their own hype a little bit. And I feel torn if you're Toto Wolff, because data is saying one thing, the driver is saying really another thing. Which way do you go? You know, because if they go the driver's route and they somehow still, like, say the car is as it is now, following Lewis's way, every engineer would be kicking themselves thinking, why did we not follow the data? It was right there. This is what it told us. But obviously the data doesn't necessarily mean it's parallel to what will happen physically on racetrack. It's bizarre. It's bizarre. It's bizarre that they wouldn't listen to him. It's bizarre that, I'll tell you what though, I find it bizarre that Mercedes have gone back on their philosophy. I find that a bit more like, 'cause, we're talking Saturday, even Friday before Bahrain, Toto Wolff's put out a statement. Mercedes are coming out with statements every single week, and it's like, all right, Mercedes, does anybody know what they're doing? Does anyone know like how to mend this problem? It just seems like, yep, you know what, guys, we got this wrong. Okay, fine, like you're gonna own up to it, but I don't know. The PR there is very, very, very strange. And how do you now start and build a new thing with Lewis's ideas, like, or whoever the case may be? It won't just solely be Lewis, but like, how do you start again? It beggars belief. Then they're going to turn up with a Red Bull car as well. Then, do you know what I mean? So, but listen, if it will do the job, if it will win them races, if it will, I don't know if there's a bit of pride there, because it's Christian Horner as well. You could imagine Christian saying, "Well, you see, you follow my philosophy, you've gone and won the car. Of course you've won because you're Mercedes." And
He did tell
that's
them to
unfair.
change their car.
He did indeed. He did indeed. Yeah, he
I'm
did
not sure he
indeed.
meant copy, but
Well, well,
they're following. It's interesting that you say about Toto being torn and the data, and also like this is a team that's won 8 championships in a row,
yeah,
and it was interesting. I think Bottas mentioned something about they just followed the numbers. They said, "Oh, this is the fastest car that we can make based on the numbers." When after he'd left, so
yeah,
maybe they've just got a set of engineers that like looking at the numbers. It's worked for them before, so they trust that methodology. But now they're seeing with the different philosophy of car, they've got to look at it slightly differently. Of course, all cars are developed with feedback from the drivers. That's
yeah.
totally to be expected. And I think a big problem for Mercedes is which driver do they listen to? Because if they listen to Lewis, okay, I say only 38. Fernando Alonso's 42 this year. I never
Yeah,
thought I'd see drivers in their mid 40s winning races potentially.
yeah.
But you've got 25-year-old George Russell in the other car, world champion in waiting potentially. So if you listen to George and shape the car around him, you're going to get the best out of George.
Mm.
And Lewis may only have 4 or 5 years left to get 8th and 9th titles. But if you listen to him and it works, then you're the heroes, because you've actually, sometimes it takes a brave man like goes with their own choices and sticks it out and I'm going to keep going and keep going. But sometimes it takes a braver man to go, actually, I got this one wrong.
Mm.
And Mercedes, it was kind of Groundhog Day vibes after Bahrain. It wasn't that bad. I mean, let's be honest, they weren't about to fold as a team and whatever. But
No.
it had that air about it of, oh my God, this is an absolute disaster. But I think they realized just how badly wrong they've got it. And,
Do you
side pods.
yeah, do you think that Aston Martin's performance is probably what's leading to it a bit more? If there's no Aston Martin in this situation and it's still, Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes, do Mercedes change?
No, I think that's a really good point you made, because Lewis mentioned in Bahrain that it was like 50% of the Mercedes that Aston Martin have, because they take the power unit, I think they
Yeah,
take the gearbox, and they take the rear suspension from
rear suspension.
Mercedes.
Yeah,
So a lot of that has to work around the body work, and you have to find the way to get the air there. and the flows and everything. So Mercedes have looked at that and gone,
yeah, exactly. No,
maybe
exactly.
side pods are the answer. But there's lots going on around the side pods. So it's going to be the way that the air comes off the front wing, and you're going to see a lot of development from Mercedes. They're going to be changing that car a lot. This is going to be a car that is almost like a chameleon. You can't really tell which version it is. And then they're going to, at one race, they're going to put all the best bits on it, like let's say Silverstone, and that thing could just all of a sudden be a rocket ship.
Go. Yeah.
We've seen it before. Look at the performance benefits they had in Silverstone last year. Lewis could have won that race. They could have won several races last year, and that was with a car that they said didn't work properly. So the chances are this is a team that's going to get it right eventually. You can't have that track record and continually get it wrong.
No,
but go on.
Sorry, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think definitely the team will bounce, no doubt about it. They will bounce back, and you raised an interesting point there about George Russell. Which driver do they listen to? Because in recent times, the numbers will show, since they're quite a numbers-based team, that George has been having the better performances in that Mercedes this year and last year. I remember thinking at the time when they signed George Russell, I thought this is a mistake, especially with the Norris conversation we just had earlier about putting him in a team where there's two quality drivers fast. You're going to have some problems. What is the reason for not listening to George Russell at this moment in time? Because he's showing that you put me in a half decent car and I'll give that team some integrity over the race weekend, even if it means I'm still out of the podiums or whatever, but I'm still doing better than the 7-time world champion. But then on the other hand, it's the 7-time world champion. So you imagine trying to listen to both those drivers, because they will both have great cases to bring to the table. And they put themselves, because that will be it. They'll finally get the car ready, and now it's a case of, it's like they'll do a Ferrari and literally have a sort of, they're communicating in two avenues for both drivers, and again, it will just stunt their growth. It's crazy. Honestly, it's crazy. But they should be back. I hope that Silverstone, and around that time anyway, that car is a rocket, because we need to save this season, title race wise. We need salvation for it, because listen, Red Bull are gone. Yeah, and Aston Martin, okay, they've come to the party, they're swinging, but in the end, I don't think they can hang with Red Bull at the moment. And only Mercedes, with the infrastructure it's got, the resources it's got everything you need. Just make better decisions,
Make a better
That's
car.
Make a better car. Exactly.
It's that simple. We've solved it.
Done. Next.
I mean, it's going to be interesting how the season plays out. I think Red Bull, the title's going to Red Bull. It's going to Verstappen, unless the cost cap penalty really pinches to them halfway through the season, and Aston Martin's massive amount, they've got like 50% more wind tunnel time. Unless that really catches up, and all of a sudden, Alonso turns up with 3 engines in his car and wings that are like 747s and stuff like that. Yeah. I don't think Red Bull are going to be caught this season.
Yeah.
And I think we need Lewis Hamilton to win again. And that there's like a twofold part of this. He says he will win again. But I think Formula One itself actually needs him to win again, because there's a certain sort of group of people that will follow Lewis. And of course, he appeals to so many people in so many different ways as a champion of people from underprivileged backgrounds and LGBTQ plus and the Black Lives Matter movement. So he's got all these things going on around him. He's just this massive beacon of hope. And also, there's just constantly a bad taste post Abu Dhabi 21. If he'd lost that title sort of completely legit on the track, fine. No one's batting an eyelid.
Absolutely.
But obviously the way he lost it, and he hasn't won since. So there's almost like not a closing of the book on that. It's always, that's the last race he should have won. But obviously there's lots of races last year he should have won. He could have won. Will Lewis Hamilton win again? Has this somehow all conspired against him? Is this one of those weird twists of fate where he never wins a race again? And no one over 300 races has ever won a race.
Well, I mean, you're talking to a McLaren fan who had Lewis at the helm, right? And I was asking that same question. I remember a point in time where you looked at the McLaren car, you thought, this car is good, but it's unreliable. Will he ever do it again? You know, the 20 sort of 11, even like 2010, 11, 12, those kind of years where you just think, Jesus, is he ever going to do it again? Listen, Formula, it can't end this way. You know what I mean? Like that kind of piece that you just brought up there. He has to win it again. He has to, because if it ends this way, like he doesn't win a race, or maybe he might win his last race ever, but it amounts to nothing really. It would be so bad. I mean, it would not look good for Formula One first and foremost. And yes, with Vettel gone now, because obviously Vettel was another person who kind of was that kind of beacon of light on the grid. And if you don't have people of that ilk, Formula One goes back to just being a sport solely, and all these other like rights and issues and whatever else, they get swept under the carpet, and we're back to where it was, 10, 15 years ago. But will he win it? I think, listen, Aaron, 100% yes, he will. He definitely will win a title again, and with Mercedes. Definitely, they'll buck their ideas up. I just need Lewis to sign that extension. Let's get that extension done, okay, and keep another 2 years, because I think because those regulations as well in 2026 could be very, very, very interesting. If Mercedes nail that, Lewis can do 8, 9, and 10. You know what I mean? Like he could if he wants to. That's the other thing though. Does Lewis want to? And I think he does, because he can't. Even he can't let his career end like that. He can't. So I, I have no doubt in my mind whatsoever. He wins title number 8 with Mercedes, no doubt.
That's warming to my heart. I'm so glad you said that.
And listen, guys, I got no bias to Lewis nor Mercedes. Okay, like you give us the engine, okay, we'll take that, but that's about it. Like that's it, man. He's the ex-girlfriend, but it is what it is. It is what it is. It can't end this way. It can't.
It would be such a shame if it did, because he deserves better than that. Of course, no one deserves to have their career or any victory taken away from them in that respect. But it would just be that constant open-ended thread to his career, which would be so sad. And talking of things that are seemingly never-ending, the wait for a Ferrari World Championship is probably going to carry on. They said they'd improve the reliability of their car, which last year the reliability was dodgy. The car, when it worked, was very good. And Charles Leclerc, when he was on form, was outstanding. Of course, 12 months ago in Australia, he delivered arguably his best victory. He dominated that weekend, pole position, I believe, fastest lap as well, and the race victory by a country margin. Even Verstappen wouldn't have got near him. That was in a slightly detuned version of what became an incredibly dominant Red Bull. But they seem to have taken a double step backwards. The car is worse. It doesn't seem as fast. And they've already had 2 energy stores go into Charles Leclerc's car. He's taken a grid drop. Okay, any subsequent grid drops won't be as bad. There'll only be 5. But Fred Vasseur, in true Ferrari fashion, says it's not like everything is going wrong. So, Peter, my question for you, what's going right?
Listen, the gift that keeps me. Now, here's where I'll have some bias, because I can't stand Ferrari, okay? Let's be very clear. But that's just from a McLaren Ferrari
The
kind
old
of old
enemy.
rivalry. That's all it is. But my God, Ferrari, as you said, they continually. I just don't understand them as a team. They're the Manchester United of Formula One. They've got everything they need, and for whatever reason, they're allergic to prosperity. What are they doing right? Literally, the only thing right is that they've got Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz, and that's it. That's all they've got right. And it's how can the car be slower than last year? That car was a rocket launcher last year. It just needed to be tamed, but it was fast. And I thought this year it would be the same. I thought it would be very, very quick, and maybe with a better leadership with Fred involved, and and people like that, maybe they might mold the issues they had. I didn't think Mattia Binotto was actually the problem at Ferrari, in all
I
honesty.
agree.
And to bring Fred into this from Sauber, I'm not gonna lie, he didn't pull up any trees over there either. So it was always gonna be a weird one. And then they've already gone and hired somebody above him straight away. Like Ferrari are a mess. Let me tell you, Aaron, they are like someone's having a bet on over there. That's what I put it down to, because there is no reason why they are still struggling as they are now. Like before, you could excuse them. The car isn't great. Things have gone wrong. Blah 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 blah. But now they were unbelievable last year. That Australian Grand Prix you're referring to, they were 42 points ahead of Red Bull and Max Verstappen after that race win. 42, and Max was like, "Yeah, season's over." By the time we got to the summer break, there was no title race. It was all Max and all Red Bull. It's astonishing. What are they doing right? They're not doing anything right, unfortunately. Like, fortunately for banter's sake, but at the same time, it's like, no. And at some point, Ferrari fans just have to stand up and riot. They're a very much they're a very passionate fan base, especially those in Italy, right? They're a very, very passionate fan base, and they've obviously got the biggest fan base in the world of Formula One, right? Across the world. At some point, someone's got to stand up and be. I'm not saying get your banner out and whatever, get whatever Fred Vasseur out or whoever it is you want gone, but just like it's actually sad. The story is sad. It's much to my delight, but it's actually sad for the neutral aspect of Formula One. Ferrari are a shambles and have been for years, and for whatever reason, they just refuse to just simple things, man. They just need to nip it in the bud, but they're allergic to prosperity. That's what I'm convinced. That's what it is.
It's the Italianness, that passion. It kind of brings itself out in sometimes the wrong ways, and it's bizarre. But you got the politics, and I hear a lot of reporters talk about the CEOs, the president of Ferrari. I think it was De Montezemolo. He put the people in place, and he just let them do their job. There's too many people at Ferrari who want to have a finger in the pie, and
yes,
that's the problem. And you're a football fan. I'm a football fan. We see it when the top people, the top brass, get involved, or in some teams' cases, don't seem to get involved enough. It can cause this real sort of void, can't it? Because I'm a Chelsea fan. I've seen managers come and go, and that was the hierarchy being very involved. You're an Arsenal fan, and we've seen Arsenal fans have protests because they don't feel the board is doing enough. With Ferrari, it's all a bit. Are they doing enough? Are they not doing enough?
Yeah.
They seem to be doing too much at times. It's so weird. I've just got a quote that I want to read you, a Carlos Sainz quote. Well, It's not necessarily a quote, but he says, this is on the race, the single lap pace deficit to Red Bull is between 0.2 and 0.3 of a second. Race pace deficit is in the region of 0.8 of a second per lap, which is huge. That is absolutely monstrous. 0.8 of a second off the lead car, of the fastest car, you should be 10th or 12th. That's where Formula One should be. But we've got this situation, we've seen it before, where one team is just doing such a good job. And look, I am no Red Bull fan. Not necessarily the brand, against the brand. I hear a lot of good stories about the brand and the people behind it, but it's mostly their race team management. The people there really make me question certain things in life. But they're doing a really good job. Let's put it that way. Because there are a lot of people at Red Bull who are just like you and me. They're normal people. They go to work and they do their job.
Sure.
They're doing a fabulous job. And Ferrari, like you say, with the resources and the infrastructure they've got, they should be doing every bit as good a job. 2007 was the last Drivers' World Champion, Kimi Raikkonen, and you can argue he should have been nowhere near that title.
Thank you. Yeah, you can imagine that. You was a McLaren team as well with Lewis that year. Jesus.
And then they won the constructors' title in 2008, and even then, I think if you put a proper driver, I'm not saying Heikki Kovalainen wasn't a proper driver. If you put an elite driver in the second McLaren win that constructors' championship that year as well. So you're looking, back to the Schumacher era where they were properly in command of a world championship. They were in command of last year's championship, as you say, 42 points ahead of Red Bull, and they let it slip. But the car wasn't necessarily the problem. It was okay. It was unreliable from times, and that's just a fundamental problem. They couldn't change it. It was procedural. It was strategical errors, and that's why Binotto got the bin, because he basically carries the can for that. We've seen it in football when results don't go your way. Who's the one who gets moved on? It's the manager, but it is also the players on the pitch who are not delivering results that are required.
Oh yeah.
And the two drivers, Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz, you mentioned it already. They are class acts, and I think Charles Leclerc is absolutely a star. He's got that qualifying pace. He's probably the fastest driver over a single lap in the field right now. He's just not being able to show it. And both drivers were pretty despondent after being beaten by Aston Martin and Ferrari in Jeddah. So, I mean, are they actually going to win a race this year? Are we going to go 12 months without a Ferrari win again or something crazy like that?
I mean, do you know what? So I did a bold predictions video like early doors, and keyword bold. So things that I think, like, I don't believe will happen, but they're close enough. Even though they're far, they're close enough that it actually could happen. And I predicted Ferrari would not win a race this season before seeing the car. Okay, so that was me just like, I threw a dart out there. Let's see where it lands.
You seem to
But
fit
the
the bullseye.
idea, well, the idea that at least 180. You know what I mean? Like the fact that I'm sitting here like looking at this car, thinking, looking at the team really and truly. Look, they have to have won a race this year. They've got to. There isn't, because who's winning the races? Are you telling me Red Bull win all 23 races this year? Come on, we can't have that. Okay, like you mentioned something earlier about like sort of how Red Bull might fare or Aston Martin might fare with their wind tunnel time. You might look at like a Braun 2009, because although they blistered at the beginning, Red Bull started to catch up a little bit towards the end, and then 2010, 11, the rest was history. Ferrari can still win races because they've got quality drivers, especially Charles Leclerc. So yes, they will win a race this year. And who knows? Australia. We're back to Australia, different kind of circuit. So who knows? Ferrari will have, I think, better luck this weekend than they've had previously.
It's interesting you mentioned Charles Leclerc. And I think we're both. I think a lot of people are of the same opinion of us. He is an outstanding driver, and that much has been evident since he joined. Well, even before he joined Sauber in the Formula 2 days. I don't know if you've seen the short clip of him and Albon in Abu Dhabi, basically driving each other off the track and getting away with it.
Yeah. You know what? When you look at rookie drivers and you think, they've got potential and whatever else, they come into Formula One and, Sauber, you buy your time, you learn what you need to learn and whatever else. His first year at Ferrari blew my mind. It blew my mind in 2019 because even though he's in a Ferrari, the race wins he got, now, don't get me wrong, Ferrari did get penalized for what they had done that season, and fine, there might be an asterisk on those race wins. Okay, fine. But how good he was in those race wins, it made me think, he's going to be a world champion. I thought he'd be world champion before Max. That's how impressed I was with him in 2019. And in the end, it is what it is. But Charles Leclerc is unreal talent, and he's being wasted at Ferrari. Okay,
he is being wasted. And is there a chance that if this continues, he moves on? But it's the same question we asked about Lando Norris. Where does he go? If Lewis moves, surely a Mercedes make a play for him. But he said he's happy at Ferrari. He says the dream is to win a championship with Ferrari, but a dream is a dream until it becomes reality. You've got to think, where is he going to win a world championship if it's not going to be at Ferrari?
Mind you, though, Leclerc and Russell and Mercedes, that could, because Russell's no mug. He's bloody good. But yeah, I think he will. If Charles, because he really wants to win, you're right. He really wants to win it with Ferrari. His heart is set on Ferrari, and you'd think, all things going well, he will sign a new contract at the end of the season. But as you say, it's only a dream until it becomes reality. And I don't know, man. I'm scratching my head on that one. That's a tough one. If I was to throw a dart out there, I'd say he stays with Ferrari and Ferrari get their act together. How they get their act together is a mystery. It's a mystery. Ferrari fans have been asking that for years, so I haven't got the answers. I can assure you. So,
Maybe
but
that metaphorical dart is hitting one of the other darts and going in for the 180. They just sort
yeah,
of fluke it. It's like, oh, we did it.
yes, no, exactly. So yeah, I mean, they he, God, if Charles Leclerc leaves, what do Ferrari do? That's it, really, isn't it? Like, unless you're somebody who is like a Ricardo, you have to be kind of. Ferrari will be desperate to find a driver of any ilk to really challenge for championships. Because with all due respect, I don't think Sainz is your man to go and lead and become Ferrari's #1 driver long term. I just don't think he is right now.
He doesn't have that X factor pace that I talk about.
Yeah,
He's got pace. He's that. If he's not a star level driver, he's is a very high A. It's sort of
yeah,
where Lando Norris is, because Lando hasn't won a race yet. You can't put him in that A star category, even
yeah.
though we know he is. If Leclerc leaves, the door is open for Lando Norris to go in at Ferrari and be this
Oh God,
whirlwind
yeah,
sensation. But we've seen British drivers go over to Ferrari in the past, and it hasn't necessarily worked out for them. But
yeah,
a lot of drivers have gone to Ferrari and it's not worked out for them. A lot of people ask the question of what would happen if Senna had gone to Ferrari. I
yeah,
think it would have been a total car wreck. Not
yeah,
literally, but they just wouldn't have worked. You got the Brazilian flair and Senna being the character he was. And okay, you might have had Jean Todt in charge, but you wouldn't have had Ross Brawn and Rory Byrne.
no,
They'd have ended up at McLaren. They
yeah,
might have had Adrian Newey, but I don't know if he'd have gone to Ferrari. But still, it's a huge question. The driver market is it's almost set at the moment, and there's a lot of fluidity to come with drivers moving on. Alonso retiring,
yeah,
Hamilton retiring. I mean, these old guys are just clogging it up, aren't they? They're useless. That pair, get them
yeah.
out.
Yeah, the people that hog the wheel, just get
No.
going, get going.
So
Yeah,
finally, to wrap up the show, who out of those three teams catches Red Bull the most? Now, of course, we must say that McLaren are furthest away, and they are a long way from Red Bull. But sort of, thinking of like a percentage game, there's a lot coming from McLaren, but Mercedes and Ferrari are closer, so they look like they caught them a bit more. So, where do you see the season going for the team that's going to develop their car best? Essentially, is the question I'm asking.
yeah. I think Mercedes will be the ones that I look at and think, you know what? Now they've actually come out and said, okay, fine, let's have a look, let's have a rethink, let's redesign this, let's go again, type of thing, with the new philosophy, with a new idea. Excuse me. Yeah, I think they're the ones that are closest to doing something about it. And yeah, because Ferrari, I can't trust. That's my only issue with Ferrari. I can't trust them. And I'll even go a step further and say, do you know what? I think McLaren, of the three, I think McLaren will be the team second to challenge that Red Bull in future ahead of Ferrari, because I can't trust Ferrari and the behind the scenes. I can't trust them. So with that, if McLaren's pieces all work, if they get it together, if it all happens in smooth transition, they will be like the Aston Martin, if that makes sense, between those three teams. They will be the ones that will come out and surprise Ferrari. They'll catch Ferrari with their pants down, but Mercedes are so good and they're so well structured, so well oiled, that they will be the ones that will be knocking on that Red Bull door for sure. I don't disbelieve that.
I agree with you, and I think the premise is correct there. There is an element of doubt around Ferrari that they've got
Yeah,
all the pieces of the puzzle. They just can't seem to put them in the right place, and it's almost feels like a blind person trying to put a puzzle together at Ferrari at times. It's just they're just can't quite seem to put it all
yeah,
together. McLaren, I really hope they get back into winning contention. This is a massive team, so
yeah,
much history, and of course we've seen big teams that have gone through droughts of winning and eventually gone out of business. Look at the likes of Tyrrell and Lotus,
yeah,
famous
yeah,
names that have gone missing. But this is a new age of Formula One. It's far from your punters who turn up and it's the guy's name on the door. Okay, it is Bruce McLaren's name, but they have become
but
an
yeah,
automotive manufacturer. So it's very,
yeah,
very different.
absolutely.
I want them to get their act together and get up there, because they've got two outstanding drivers. And the more drivers we have in competitive machinery, without Formula One being a spec series, it's just the dream. It really, really is. We want that three-way team fight. We still aren't getting it because one or two of the teams are dropping the ball. I think Mercedes are the best equipped to go and challenge Red Bull. They've just got to put it together. That car needs to change because they've got the drivers to do it. And even when Lewis moves on, they'll still have the pick of the drivers because they've got that kudos. They are Mercedes. They can pay the big bucks. They've got the infrastructure in place. They've got the history, and they'll have an open seat next to George Russell for someone to test themselves. So it's a long path, but hopefully we'll get there in the end. So that's who we think. Of course, people who are listening and watching can leave their thoughts in the comments section below, or you can send us a tweet or something on the world of social media. And where can we find you, Peter, on social media? You mentioned PeteronPole and McLaren Fan TV earlier on. Tell us where you are on socials as well.
Yeah, so on socials, I'm on Twitter. I'm also on McLaren Fan TV, and then I'm also Peter on Sports because I talk about various things, Formula One and football, heavy Arsenal related stuff, propaganda, McLaren and Arsenal propaganda. And then on Instagram is Peter Majuzzi. It's just my full name. But yeah, mainly Twitter is at McLaren Fan TV, at Peter on Sports. You'll find me there, and then the YouTube's McLaren Fan TV, PeteronPole.
Excellent. So thank you very much for making time to come onto the show. It's been absolutely fantastic having you on. Really, really insightful conversation. Really enjoyed it. Really, really enjoyed it. So
no, it was real fun. I'd love to do it again for sure. This is real fun. Absolute pleasure to be on.
Absolutely. We'll have you back on. It's been absolutely brilliant. Coming up on the channel, well, I was going to say Australia instant reaction, but you'll be able to watch that back by the time this comes out, and hopefully more content between races. And you know, we've got a month between Australia and Baku, so plenty of time to put some stuff together. So my thanks to Peter again for joining me. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, subscribe to Peter's 2 channels, and thank you very much for watching.